understanding.
Jason Falinski is a former Liberal MP for Mackellar and joins me now. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, PK.
How much damage has this done to the Liberal Party?
It's hard to know, PK, but look, it's not about what the political damage it's done. It's about what we stand for as a party, and we've always stood for a cohesive nation, one nation where you are judged on by what contribution you make, not by the colour of your skin, which, you know, is exactly the point that Jacinta Price was making during the Voice referendum last year. So it's just disappointing that we are having to have this discussion at this time, because I think that these were very well settled issues within the party.
You say they're well settled, but they're clearly not settled. There are some in the party who think that, you know, she should be allowed to say these things. What do you say to that?
Just because you should be allowed to say something doesn't mean you should say them. But beyond that, it's a question of actually not what is being said, but what people believe. And if if you're a Liberal, you believe in the ideal that we should be judged on the basis of our character, not on the colour of our skin, not our ancestry, not where we're from, but what contribution that we should make. And that is the responsibility of our government to provide as many Australians as many opportunities as they see fit that they want to take up. So this is away from what we stand for as a political movement. It is what Liberals throughout the ages have always stood against. So I'm not entirely sure what Jacinta was trying to communicate when she said that, but I think how it has been interpreted by many people is actually diametrically opposed to the very thing and the very reason that our party was formed. I mean, let's not forget, PK, it was the Liberal Party that ended the White Australia policy. It was the Liberal Party that ended sectarianism in Australia after World War II. These are, putting people together, creating communities and creating a nation in which anyone can thrive has been very core to our identity since we were founded.
Well, you're a student of history and you know that John Howard spent a lot of time really trying to mop up what were comments he made about Asian immigration at the end of the 80s. Do you see comparisons here?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, what is it? Smart people learn from their mistakes, but really smart people learn from the mistakes of other people. And what John Howard did at the end of the 80s was try and clumsily express a view about immigration and the changes that was creating in Australian society. And look, he ended up losing his seat over it in 2007 because the Chinese community in Bennelong had not forgotten what he said. And, despite the fact that the Chinese diaspora, the Indian diaspora, share the very things that we stand for, their values and our party and our political movement is completely aligned because of comments like that, because some people choose to identify people on the basis of their ancestry or their race or colour of their skin, means that despite the fact that we represent their values, they don't vote for us. So it's a really silly and stupid things to do politically, but philosophically speaking, it shows that people don't seem to understand what it is that we believe in as a political movement and as a political party, and why liberalism came to the fore in democracy, starting with the United Kingdom back in the 16th century.
Let me take you to the point you made. You said he ultimately lost his seat. Well, he was also a very successful Prime Minister for a lot of years until that happened, but he did lose his seat, and there was a backlash right from some Chinese Australians. There's no doubt about it. Bennelong has many Chinese Australians, of course, in that seat. Do you think they never forgot? Do you think these things do last, that communities like, for instance, the Indian community now hold on to these things because they hear them and they hear them really negatively about who they are and how these people view them?
PK, I appreciate that we're going to the political consequences of these comments. But once again, I want to stress that regardless of how people vote, we have always believed in judging people on the basis of their character, not on their ancestry, not on their skin, not on whatever nominal group they belong to, a point that Jacinta Price was making during the Voice referendum. But the consequences of John Howard's comments in the late 80s was, yes, they followed him for a number of decades after that. And yes, he was a very successful Prime Minister, but he could have been even more successful, I suspect, if those comments had followed him for the rest of his political career. And what is happening now is a distinct moment, and I notice Liberals like Julian Leeser, Tim Wilson, Mark Speakman, and a plethora of other people who I obviously don't have time to name. But even, I understand why Alex Hawke got allegedly so hot under the collar, because he's spent so much time reaching out to ethnic communities to explain the benefits that the Liberal Party has to them as a community, only for it to be potentially undone by some errant and potentially unintended consequences.
So what do you make then of Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price saying that his approach, and neither of us were there, so we can't be sure of how he approached it, but that his approach was, anti-Liberal women?
Well, look, without getting into that, what I would say is in her first speech, which was an excellent speech, Jacinta Price said to the Parliament that all of us need to take more personal responsibility for what we do, how we behave, and the consequences of those things. She has said something that a lot of people, a lot of her colleagues, a lot of people in the Australian community have been upset about. I understand that, and she needs to take responsibility for that, to fix that so that we can move on. Because let us face facts. At the moment, Australia is going through challenging times, and the government has no answers to those challenging times other than road user charges and increased taxes on superannuation. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about comments made by Jacinta Price 2 or 3 days ago, which are now resonating with a large number of people in the Australian community. And it means that we are not being presented in the best possible light that we should be.
Jason, it's even longer than that. It was Wednesday last week, so it shows how...
Okay, thank you.
But just the extent of the damage. But doesn't that speak just finally to the extent of the damage? Because, I have been around a long time, just like you, and I have not seen a story where people are, are still so upset that much, a week later after it first breaks.
Yeah, look, PK, yes, is the answer. I mean, there's a lot going on here. There are a lot of people, the horseshoe theory of politics. There are a lot of people on the right of the Australian spectrum that are so far right they've gone round to the left again, who are pointing to immigration is what is causing all these problems. And that sort of argument, which is, look, increased immigration when we've constrained supply-side responses in the Australian community do create a problem. But they're not the cause of the problem, it's a result. And so we really should be focusing as a party on fixing the underlying causes of the problems and challenges that so many Australians are facing right now, instead of talking about things that really are not going to solve anything and frankly are creating a lot of damage to us and mostly to a nation, because we're not advancing the political discussion, the policy discussion that we should be.
Jason Falinski, always great to speak to you. Thank you.
Thanks, PK.